start. So I do a walk in the my neighborhood. You let me know when you want me to start.
Hey, let's go upstairs, Daryl.
Okay.
Just take your time, Kenny.
I was the longest postmaster here. I lasted 23 years before I retired 3 years ago. But I graduated from Marshall High School in '65. I was just 10 years behind you. I kept flunking a lot, so it took me 10 years longer to get through high school than it did you people. But I started this museum in 1987. When I was postmaster upstairs in 1987, I was on the Marshall home tour. And I ran through people through my office and on the workroom floor and through the assistant postmaster's office and out the lobby. And everybody thought it was a museum. They didn't realize we worked up there with all the old furniture. So this gave me an idea to start the museum downstairs in this room. And within 2 years, I outgrew this room, and we went to another room, So you're going to see 6 rooms, soon to be 7 rooms down here, plus the new building outside that I'll talk about later. But everything you see here today has either been given to me, donated to me, or people have donated money, or service clubs have donated money to help grow this museum. The post office says I can do it as long as it doesn't cost them anything. They give me the space down here, the heat it and lights, but the rest of it's up to me to make it work. When I retired, I did get an agreement with the Postal Service that I could continue to do it on my own time without pay, of course, they said, which is fine. I love doing it because it's my museum. If it wasn't for me, it would disappear, I'm afraid. Hopefully my 2 daughters are both post office people. One's a postmaster already, and the other's a supervisor. Hopefully someday they'll be able to take it over when I want to get too old to get up and down those stairs. I wish I had a handicap entrance, but I don't. Post office said if they had to put one in, they'd kick me out because they couldn't afford it, so that's why we don't have one and stuff like that. But this first room was the old ASC office was down here, so security office was down here in the 30s. When I came here in 1970 as a sub-clerk carrier, the recruiters were down here. The Army, Air Force, and Navy recruiters were down here. And they got mad at each other because if the Army guy was out, the Marine guy would talk the guy coming down to join the Marines and not the Army or the Air Force or whatever. So they all moved out. So this just left an empty room. And this room is set up like an old post office. This is the Metz post office from Metz, Michigan. That was closed down in the 50s. We located it, Belchers had it at their auction. Antique auction about 10, 12 years ago, and the Marshall Rotary Club helped me buy this to put in the museum. And Metz had no city or rural delivery. You either got your mail out of a P.O. box or general delivery. There was no door-to-door delivery in Metz at that time there. And in the small post offices like Metz or even Soreska, which is near here, Deconcha, postmasters had to buy their own equipment and put it on their own counters in their grocery store, hardware store, drugstore, or in your house or whatever. And as they grew, they had sections they could add on to make the post office grow as your community grew. And eventually, if it grew too big, the post office would take it over and they would own all the equipment in the building itself there. But there's an old writing desk there. People used to write letters. Now they email there. Except me, I'm still stubborn. These are old scales where we weighed the mail. These bird feed scales go back to the 1890s here. These are reproduction of Butch Cassidy Sundance Kid Wanted Dead or Alive posters. This is a 1932 parcel post chart from Bay City, Michigan I found. First class was 3 cents. We still had the penny postcards in 1932. We still have a lot of the old timers come in and want a penny postcard. And they're still a penny. I said, it's just the tax that makes them, what, 24, 25 cents. An old vending machine there. And if you come around this side, her stamp drawer. Metz was a very small office, believe me. She kept her stamps in there, her money there. Her whole collection box was right there for the whole town there. And she was done at night to lock up for security. She would just close her windows and close up like that. And there's still names over here. Metz is a German-Polish community up there. They raise a lot of potatoes.
Where is that?
It's up by Roger City, by the bridge going over to Roger City, and directly south of Roger City, maybe 20, 30 miles there. They get their mail out of Posen, Michigan. Now when they close it down, Posen, Michigan delivers it. I gave a tour to a gentleman and his wife, and he sent this back to me for a present. This is a postcard. He was stationed in World War II in Alaska, and they didn't have anything to write on, and they would take bark off the trees up there and make their own cards. And this is from 1943, Yukon, Merry Christmas, Sweetheart, and it's mailed to his girlfriend in Chicago, Illinois, the Postal Service. Our machines would eat it up completely. Here's a wooden box. You don't see very many wooden boxes anymore mailed. This is from Dr. Ryan, MD, in Battle Creek, Michigan, to Mr. Rimmer, Marshall, Michigan, in care of Mrs. Hardwick. And look at there, no street address, just Mrs. Their names. Still has the stamps on it, 4 cents, and it still has the medicine in it. Richard Gregerson, who used to work for me, he's retired now. This was his grandfather. He had it in his possession, donated it to me.
Can you still mail something like that?
Yeah, you could.
A piece of bark?
Yeah, I think they would. I've seen them come through. Yeah.
Mike, back when Duffy Doherty was a coach at Michigan State, he got a postcard from an irate fan, very upset. And he said the postcard didn't upset me. It was the fact that it was addressed to Dumb Duffy, East Lansing, Michigan, and I got it.
Ooh, they knew who he was, the post office, right? That's cute. That's cute. This is a 1913 parcel postcard. That's when the post office started accepting packages, is in 1913. And this is a chart, goes up to 11 pounds, where we take 70 now. But a 1 pound package in 1913 to Chicago cost you 6 cents. All the way to California cost you 12 cents. And these must be major train routes, as far as I can figure out what that's routed there. This is a stamp drawer where the clerks would keep their stamps. Then they could roll this in the vault at night and lock it up. Because we have 2 huge walk-in vaults upstairs there. Then this is a sorting case. And this one came out of Lowell, Michigan, 1939, where they would sort mail in to break it down to each carrier, city carrier, rural carrier. And people have given me their old Look at Life magazine. Look at that hairdo, ladies, in 1932. Or a hat. I'm not sure. One lady thought it was a hat. I'm not sure there's a hat or a hairdo company out there.
You can be whatever you want it to be.
That's right. Then look at this. This amazes me. I forgot about the Smothers Brothers when they got kicked off of TV for their views of Vietnam. And look how they talk on TV now about everything. Yeah, it's very mild. There's the American Home Magazine, 1935. And what I like is the ads. There's a brand new car for $510. A beautiful look at, thrilling to drive. And the ads in here are amazing. Here, look at the camel. But what amazed me is the cost of a car is really, I thought was cheap, but a refrigerator was $77. To me, that's out of whack compared to what cars cost now and what refrigerators cost now. It just didn't seem right. Here's a Woman's Day magazine, 2 cents, 1946. And they had Spam back then too. I was amazed they had Spam.
Been there a long time.
Then this is a money order logbook from 1887 out of Girard, Michigan. Girard had a post office until 1911. But we were the first ones to start money orders during the Civil War when soldiers were sending money home to their loved ones. Somehow it didn't get there, so we come up with the idea of a money order where if you sent it, if it didn't get there, that we could replace it and get you another one. At least you didn't lose your money. And they would be a logbook on who bought it, who it went to, and for how much. So if you had ancestors that lived in Girard up to 1911 when it was closed down, you could see who they were paying their bills to. There, it's kind of neat, beautiful handwriting. Then this is the last day, their postmarking machine on June 30th, 1911. Girard was closed down, and this is what they hand canceled their mail down in Girard. Actually, the store there, the Girard Country Store, is still there. I see it's closed now, though, where the post office was. Then these are scheme books. To be a clerk in the post office, you had to learn the Michigan scheme. You had to know every city in Michigan, and you had to know what train to put it on. And these are flashcards. Like this is every city in Michigan from let's see what year is this? 1906. These cards date back to. And like there's Altsea, Michigan. It went on the Detroit Muskegon train or the Owasso disc. You had to learn these, and these are cases you would practice on to keep up with it, because they would test you like every 6 months to make sure you were throwing the mail right to keep it going fast. But the problem was once you learn it, the trains keep changing the schedules. This is another scheme book from 1950, and look at all the pasties in there where they've had to change their line of thinking because the trains kept cutting back. And that's why we put using the trains, because the trains kept cutting back on us so much. And if you want to come around here, what I'm trying to do is deal with each craft. We have the rural carrier craft that go out in the country, the city carrier craft, the RPO craft, the hypo craft that doesn't exist anymore. And this deals with RFD. And what's RFD stand for? rural free delivery. It started in 1896 in Charleston, West Virginia, had the first rural route. We had the first rural route 2 months later in Climax, Michigan, which isn't too far from here. This is Mr. Lawrence right there, the very first rural carrier of Michigan. He started on December 3rd of 1896. This is a picture of him when he traded his horse and buggy and got his first car. So this is a picture that was blown up from the paper that he had. It was in the paper, the Climax paper there. And that is his niece, who I met at the 100th anniversary over in Climax of rural free delivery. She was like almost 100 years old too. She is deceased now, but this was his license plate that he had on his car, U.S. Mail. These are on loan to me from the Kalamazoo Public Museum. And this was his first mail bag. He put all of his mail in there and delivered his mail. And you look at that, this wouldn't even hold one customer's mail. But 1896, we didn't have the J word, junk mail, advertising mail. You know, we didn't have phone bills, electric bills, Visa bills, Sears bills, Penny's bills, all those things that we get now.
My husband was a rural mail
Carrier?
I wish he was here because
Yes.
he had a Jeep just chock full.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, we live in a small town, and we got a letter one time addressed to Grandma and Poppy, 110 Brick House, with our zip code on it.
And you get it? Yeah. It still can be done in small towns.
Yeah.
It still can be done. This is an interesting person here. This was a rural carrier down in Stella, Kentucky. And he was hired during World War II when we lost a lot of our men that had to go to war. So we hired people that couldn't read. And this gentleman couldn't read. And what it was, the postmaster inside made this bib for him. And he delivered by horseback too, to about 15 homes in the hill of Kentucky. And she made this bib for him and numbered little pockets in that behind there, 1 through 15. And she numbered the mailboxes. He could read numbers. So when he went to your mailbox, it was number 15, he'd take mail out of 15 pocket number 15, or pocket 1 to mailbox 1. He could deliver it by the numbers, but he couldn't read your name or address. Well, they didn't have an address probably back then. It was just your name, Stella, Kentucky, or whatever. But that's how. And they let him go until he retired in the late 60s. I met a postmaster that knew him and the post lady that helped him deliver the mail down there that way. Then this is some bearskin gloves worn by George Washington Grove in 1896. There. And this is Mr. Smith. This is Dick Carver from Marshall. Probably some of you heard of Dick Carver. This was his grandfather. This was his buggy on Route 3 in Marshall. That was his first car, and that's Portello Road, Dick told me. He's out on Portello Road in Marshall delivering mail. I can't imagine in his suit, though. I think that was staged. Probably just got out of church or something there. But he was very active in the Union, and it amazed me. We had a union in the government in the early 1900s, and these are his convention pictures. This is Cadillac, Michigan, 1925. Here's Nashville, Tennessee, 1912, and he's right there. Here's Grand Rapids, 1913. He's right there. Evansville, Indiana, 1913. This is a state convention, national convention, and that's his convention badge that he wore. Then in 1920, he went to be the president of the National Federation of Rural Letter Carriers in 1920. Well, that's quite an honor to have a post office to have a rural carrier as the national president of the union. I wouldn't want to be postmaster here then. I don't know how strong the unions were back then. But I love their motto. Their motto was start clean and stay clean. Because you can imagine in those kind of buggies or cars out on dirty, dusty roads, it probably come back pretty dirty in the summertime if it was dry out there. This is in front of Lansing State Capitol in the early 1900s before you had trucks, a city carrier delivering to the Capitol building in Lansing there. And this is another sorting case. I found this south of Cleveland, Ohio, and I forgot the name of the town. The postmaster called me and said that this was in our basement. Do I want it? So I drove down south of Cleveland and picked this up one time and had it restored. It was a little water damaged, a little warped. We got it fixed up pretty well there. Then this deal over here with city carriers. City carriers didn't start until 1863, and that was in Cleveland, Ohio. Had the first city delivery, and that was because of you women. We started delivering mail door to door. That was because you women would go down to the post office in Cleveland and wait for a letter from your husband or son in the Civil War. If it wasn't on the first train, they waited for the next train, and the next train, and the next train. Pretty soon they were sitting in the lobby all day gossiping, taking up space. And the postmaster said, look, ladies, go home. letter comes in from your husband or son, we'll have it brought to your house. So that's how city delivery started in 1963. And then it was adopted thereafter in different towns. There was like different towns had options of having it, and not like Olivet had a chance. So I was postmaster in Olivet for 5 years before I came back to Marshall. And they had a chance to have it back in the 30s. But because the post office was in a general store downtown, and the downtown merchants didn't want it, because then people wouldn't be coming downtown every day to pick up their mail and maybe stop in their store and buy something. So they voted it down, where Bellevue got it because they wanted it. That's why some towns don't have it, the smaller towns, and some
How
do.
were wages paid for and so forth if some towns did it and other towns didn't?
Well, they were done by the, at one time it was done by the revenue. The post office took it. The postmaster, if it was just a postmaster, no carriers, the postmaster was paid on the amount of revenue of stamps he or she sold,
Right.
out of their store. If they sold, like say 10,000 a year, they got like 5% of that sales, or 10%. I'm not sure though,
Yeah.
but there's a percentage.
Okay.
It's like now our retail stores, like we have Felposh here in Marshall sells stamps for us. They get I think it's like 2 or 3% of their sales. We pay them.
Okay.
So they do make a little to cover their costs. And that's what they did back in the olden days too.
Okay.
Yeah. But then when they started delivering mail, this is what they looked like. This is kind of a uniform they wore. These are reproduction of hats, but the badges are real. That's a badge from 1880s out of Detroit, Michigan that was donated to me. There. Then this picture here shows me that my mother lied to me when I was a kid. She told me when babies were delivered to the house, storks brought them. This proves the mail person brought them. Somebody sent me that picture. It's late 1890s, early 1900s by the uniform the gentleman's wearing, but it shows the mailman who delivered babies back then. Hopefully that was his own kid. This is my only ladies' hat. This is what the ladies would wear. It's hard to get people to wear hats now. The carriers just don't like hats. There. And I got some old uniforms here, there, and just uniforms. This is my oldest collection box called Letterbox, 1880s out of Lowell, Michigan. I found that there. This came out of Grand Junction, Iowa. A lady donated this from Kalamazoo. This was her mother's in their grocery store. And this was built after parcel post was started, so these windows at least come up where you can stick the parcel in through there, where that one does not give you. Go around the side there. Then over here deals with stamp. The first stamp ever issued was in Bath, England in 1840, called the penny black. I don't know if any of you are stamp collectors. I can't afford one, so I only can show you a picture. But that's May 2nd of 1840, the first stamp ever in the world was used. We copied England 7 years later on July 1st of 1847. We came out with a 5-cent Benjamin, 10-cent George. And there again, these are just copies. I can't afford the real ones. They're thousands of dollars. Here. But before stamps were issued, and I'm going to open it, I'll take this out and open this for you folks. I go to stamp shows and buy old letters that pertain to Calhoun County or Marshall especially. This one was mailed out of Marshall with a round dater like this. May 11th, no year. We didn't put a year on letters at first for some reason. V stood for 5 cents, Roman numeral V. And it was addressed to D.V. Bell, Esquire, Auditor General, Michigan, Detroit. Look at that, going to Detroit, no street address or nothing. And this was written before envelopes were invented. So you would seal it with wax, but if you open this up, it's from the Treasurer of the Township of Sheridan, USA, relative to road tax, May 9th, 1846. That was mailed out of Marshall. And Marshall was founded in 1832, so it was only not too many years after we were founded that was mailed through Marshall. There. Then I bought some other letters that have been postmarked out of Marshall. Here's one, 1856. Actually, I don't know what year they started putting dates, but that is dated 1856 out of Marshall. Just going to a woman's name, Madison, Wisconsin. But there again, we didn't have city delivery. Everybody would go down to the post office through GD, general delivery, and they would just go through the S's or the B's, whatever your last name was, and find your letter for you. That's how we delivered it. Here's one, 1859. A woman's name, Warsaw, Illinois. Here's one just paid 3. This is before stamps again, paid 3. There's no letter inside or no date, so I can't tell you what date that one was. Then, have any of you ever heard of California, Michigan? When I was a kid, my grandparents lived in California, Michigan. And when I went to school on Monday, I would tell the kids I went to California yesterday. They'd all call me a liar. There's no way I could have gone to California and got back. And now I have proof that there is a California, Michigan, though. It's south of Coldwater Lake. You go down to Girard and go east from Girard about 6 miles. And it's called California Corners now, but the building's completely gone where the post office was. But this was California, Michigan, March 9th, paid 3 cents. Going to some missionary in Boston, not even Boston, Massachusetts, just Boston. And if you open this up, this is dated 1833. It's right there, March 22nd, 1833. And the beautiful handwriting in there.
Yes.
Beautiful handwriting. They were sending money to some missionary in Boston. And stuff. I bought that on eBay, $80 I paid for that. People collect what they call dead postmarks. Post offices that don't exist anymore, those envelopes with a postmark or handwritten, because they didn't have postmarks back then, are very valuable. And it depends how long the post office is open, how valuable it is. Some offices were only open a couple years, so if you have one of those, they're worth thousands of dollars. You know. And I'll go into it later how many Calhoun County had and how many I have of them already. But once we started canceling letters, this is a hit-up table, and some of you might remember the banging noise in the background. Some of you remember Lee and Dickey that worked here at the post office?
I did.
Did? Okay. Lee and...
Daddy was here for 41 years.
Yeah.
He would have loved to see this.
Oh, yes.
He would
Yeah, I
have-
worked for him about 2 years before he retired.
He would have been one of your volunteers if they
Oh,
had-
yeah.
that they were airstreamers and
Yeah.
hit the road after that.
Anyway, this is how they had to do it by hand. And when carpal tunnel set in, they come up with the idea of a hand crank machine, and you run it through there, run it, and there's one right there we used to use upstairs. What's really sad, and your dad probably wouldn't believe this if he was alive today, we don't even cancel mail anymore at the post offices. They all go to Kalamazoo, the processing plants around the United States, the big plants, they cancel all the mail to spray. They have to do it because they have to spray the barcodes on it to read the mail. The mail used to be read by 8 to 10 people would read the mail before it actually got delivered, depending on how far it went. Now the mail is only handled once by one person. It went down from 8 to 10 people down to one person because the machines can read it, read your address, spray it on, and the machine reads it until the carrier gets it in route order, and he picks up the tray, he goes out and he doesn't touch it until he puts it in your mailbox. What a change that has been. And this is neat. These are leather postcards. These were very popular in the early 1900s. You can pass those around. And some of you, I don't know if any of you remember, here's a Mrs. Seeger in Marshall, Michigan. These are leather postcards addressed to a Mrs. Seeger that lived here in Marshall, Michigan on Michigan Avenue here. These ladies found this and donated this postcards to me. Seeger. Some of you might remember it. But if you want, when you're done looking at it, just lay them back there. And if you want to come on over here, come on over this way. It takes about an hour to go through here, so I gotta kind of move you along so you don't get bored. Fall asleep. What's your last sin? What was Frank's sin? Your dad?
Yes.
Very favorite friend of mine.
Oh,
Him and
nice.
your mother. Used to come down to Bill's Byrite to see Dorothy and I. I used to work at Bill's Byrite and your dad. Used to be good shoppers. This is my pretend postmaster's office, my pretend secretary's desk. And you, secretary, to open it up, bingo, there's her typewriter. And you know what's sad? Kids, the young kids, I do a lot of school tours, they don't even know what a typewriter is. You know, they're computers, you know. But that is neat. Then this is a postmaster's roll top desk that came out of Lansing, Michigan. It's in great shape here. I've got old pay records from the Marshall Post Office back to 1899. This is interesting. This is from 1903. And this is every 3 months they would get paid. And this is like the postmaster made $750 every 3 months. The assistant made $375, a big cut. Then like the clerks made $150. The carriers made $212.50, except one, Mr. Flynn and Horse, made $262.50 every 3 months. So he got an extra $50 every 3 months for his horse and buggy allowance. Isn't that something? There. Some of you might recognize the names. There was Willis, Faulkner, Gout, Houston, Graff, Birch, Flynn, Wade, Whitaker. Some of those names. Then this is my one of only two that I have of Milt Kibler, 1945, being appointed postmaster by President Harry Truman. Because until 1971, under the spoil system, we were appointed by the President of the United States. You had to either be a good Democrat or a good Republican. Fred Ryer was the last political appointee under the Republican era. And we always had to worry about losing our job every 4 years until late 1930s. They changed it. Once you got in as a Democrat Republican, they couldn't fire you until you retired. Then the Democrats Republicans would hire their friend of the community or whatever. But that's from 1945. Then I've got a couple here of temporary appointments. This is 1865, appointing Ced Lewis as acting postmaster in Marshall, signed by the Postmaster General. Then once he was confirmed by the Senate, then the President, Abraham Lincoln, signed off. And the Brooks family has the original, signed by Abraham Lincoln, appointing Ced Lewis as postmaster in 1865. I do have, 20 years later, Ced Lewis's son, Bill Lewis, became postmaster. I don't have his appointment, but I have when he was fired. This is the actual letter. Executive Mansion, Washington, D.C., July 20th, 1885. You are hereby suspended from the office of postmaster at Marshall in the county of Calhoun in the state of Michigan, according to some 1768 law, and is signed by President Grover Cleveland. Now, why he was dismissed, you know, whether it was politics or something else, we're not quite sure, but he was relieved of duty. And, there. Then, even a cigar company stole their name, Postmaster Smokers, 2 for a nickel, sorting nail and smoking a cigar there. Then, you're probably old enough to remember this. I should, but I don't think we did it in our country school. These are savings stamps. The post office would sell them, or also the school teachers told me they would sell them at the school. And you would try to bring in a dime, a quarter, and fill these books up. Then you would redeem them at the post office for a savings bond. Then we at the post office would put it in this machine here, like that, and go down with it, and it would poke holes into it like a canceled check there. Then this is the building. You can come around here. This is the building of the Marshall Post Office, step by step. You can see there's your high school back there in 1932. Doesn't look, well, it looks a little different now. There, but that's the school there. There's a Masonic temple there. But the Harrington Hotel was here, and they were going to build a new post office, and they were going to build it actually next to the Brooks building, and that where the little park is now, Carver Park. And Mr. Brooks said, "No way, I want a bigger post office. I want it away from my building." So he had the Harrington Hotel condemned here. It was kind of a rundown hotel. They said it was kind of a red light area, and they wanted to get it out. In Marshall, that's what the rumors. And that's what Frank Holtz, I don't know if you ever heard of Frank Holtz. He was telling me this story, and he was around a long time. So anyway, they were going to build the standard red brick post office of the 30s. They built these to get people back to work during the Depression. And Mr. Brooks says, "No way, I want a Michigan sandstone, a copper roof, and a dome." So he just paid for the design of this out of his own pocket to make this special here in Marshall. So we're a very unique looking post office because of Mr. Brooks there. It's kind of neat how they did it step by step of different things there. And we're down in this hole right here. Then when they dedicated it, they had Governor Green came down from Lansing, Mr. Oliver was postmaster at that time. And there's Dick Lutie. I don't know if any of you know Dick Lutie. You look at that, it looks just like his face there. That's Dick Lutie right there as a kid there. And you'll see here, the picture here where they had the dedication ceremony, it looks like they had wood stacked out in the middle of the street out here. And I found out from Frank Holtz, who told me a lot, this was, they were tearing out the interurban tracks down Michigan Avenue, and those were bricks they were removing to get the tracks out and stuff, and relaying it there. But they did put a time capsule out there behind the cornerstone in front of my old office out there. It's still there. Hopefully, maybe, I won't be alive 100 years when they open it, I don't think. Yeah. But I like to show kids how we use bicycles and we use tricycles there. Then over here is a brass mailbox. These were very popular in 1922. They made these for fancy hotels, and this came out of the Post Tavern Hotel in Battle Creek. It was a Post cereal. Bought this at an auction for this. Then these are different mailboxes. They're kind of neat. This is my favorite one. With the junk there, first class there. Okay, the next room that we're going into, every doorway has a little step up, but the next room, you need to use a lot of imagination. We're going to be now at the Marshall train station, and the mail train will be in front of you. And if you listen, you'll hear the whistle. Follow me.
Maybe we should send him some of the.
One here. This is a mural of it, almost full size. One of my real cares is an artist upstairs, so she painted it for me, and I had somebody build a little deck to make it look like you're at the train station. But this was our sign down at the train station. Danger! Look out for mail thrown from pouch at this point, because if the train didn't have to stop in Marshall to pick up passengers, we would put it in that pouch, put it on this steel arm, and the guy with the steel arm would catch it on the fly going 30, 40 miles an hour, so it wouldn't have to slow down. In a few minutes, I'll show you a video of how we did that. This is the Lakota, Michigan post office. They built a new one a couple years ago. I got them to give me the old one inside and reconstruct it here, otherwise it would have been destroyed. People collect boxes here. Here's a collection I paid over $3,000 of my own money out of. People collect these, they make banks out of them, or they put them in walls, or whatever they want to do. There's different styles. They started in the 1850s. They were wood with a peephole, then they went to copper, brass, different styles. Because postmasters had to buy their own equipment, so there's different vendors out there selling them. Until the post office took it over in the 50s, where we own everything now. We went to the low bidder, and this is what you see now in all the post offices, the cheap, no character, low bid one. There. This one is my most valuable one. That one's worth about $400 there, the double class one. There. There's a lady, Jane Ingram from South Carolina. She wrote 2 books on these about boxes, and she's an expert on them. She has a price list, and so I know what the prices are, what they actually go for. Then these are mailboxes you see on the old homes in Marshall. These are the mail person's nightmare. See, back in the olden days, when they were built, that was fine. It would hold your mail, but it won't hold that J mail anymore. Or the magazines there, they're so slippery now they fall off. I can remember one time delivering milk in North Kalamazoo, and a lady called back and told the postmaster I threw her magazine on the floor, on the porch. I didn't, it just went there, and the wind blew it off, and she accused me of throwing her mail on the porch. This is my favorite mailbox called Visible Mail. You can keep it locked, take the mail out at night, and the next day when the mail person comes along, you can actually see the mail, whether you had mail there. These are more collection boxes, different styles over the years that we've done. Another scheme case where you practice the schemes there. Then these are mailboxes you see in big buildings. This came out of Michigan National Battle Creek. When they tore Michigan National down, I got them to give me the collection box. The Federal Center Battle Creek did some major remodeling. They ripped this out. I got them to give it to me. But when they were taking this out, they found 21 letters stuck between the 4th and 5th floor. I never made it down here. So they gave them to me, and I said, oh no, I'm not touching this. So I took them to the postmaster in Battle Creek. I said, here, this is your problem. It happened in your city. So he sent them to Grand Rapids, our headquarters, and of course it hit the newspaper that we stored mail for 50 years. But 3 letters was written by Lieutenant Grisdale, going to his mom and dad in Royal Oak, Michigan, one to his wife from Clawson, Michigan, and one to LaSalle University. They couldn't locate her, so they sent them to me to put in the museum, but I called the Clawson postmaster who got a hold of the retired postmaster, and we located her down in Florida. She had remarried, her husband had passed away, and so I sent the letters down to her in St. Petersburg, Florida. Of course, she ran down the newspaper and glad it took 50 years to get a letter from her husband. Then she mailed them back to me and said, Mike, here, put them back in the museum where they belong. But this letter was written July 18, 1945. Hi, darling, I love you. How's my honey today? I should have written last night. For some reason, I didn't. Nothing new, just laying around until Friday. Harvey will be under the weather a few hours afterwards. They were going to operate on him from the war wounds that he received in Germany, and she was 8 months pregnant with their daughter, and she couldn't travel. She's had a lot of problems with pregnancy, so all they could do was write back and forth there. But he did come out okay, but he had since passed away, and she had remarried. And she came here a couple years ago to see what I did there, so that's her. She was proud that I put them on display like that. Let's come into this room. You won't fire. This was designated as a fallout shelter. I don't know if you kids ever knew that when you were kids in the 50s. This had war supplies in here, food, canned food. This basement was a fallout shelter because Battle Creek was a prime target for atomic attack in the 50s. And they had enough food and water in this room right here to feed 300 people for a week down here. And Pete Lyden, I don't know if everybody remember Pete Lyden, he was contracted, he told me, with his bulldozers to bulldoze the windows shut on the outside from the radiation wouldn't get in here. But in the early 80s, I was checking on this room and the food started rusting through and it was getting nasty in here, so I made the civil service or civil defense or whatever department take it out. So this just left me a nice room to do. But the road carriers had a couple things different than I did. They got an old road carrier's case. It must be people were tall back then, because you can't imagine reaching up there, because they had to case the mail to get it in route order, then they would pull it back out to keep it in route order to put in their car or in their buggy. And this operation here is called the milk stool scrapper. Most road carriers were farmers, and to keep the mail in order, they brought their milk stool from the barn, turned it upside down, and then when they would strap their mail out, because they should, isn't that neat? I mean, they would have this case like this, so when they're pulling their mail, see, just keep it nice in order, and they would strap it out with the straps into the
I got it.
what?
Now it's all pretty sorted.
Now it's all pretty orange trays, they don't even need to case it anymore. I mean, 90% of the mail, letter mail, now it's all straight away, they can't case it anymore. But for the road carriers or the postmasters that couldn't afford a road carrier's case, they had canvas cases. Now I have never seen one of these before. These are canvas cases you would hook on the wall of the post office or your house, and you would case the mail into there, then they would unhook it and just roll it up, put it underneath the arms and take it out to the car or buggy, and as you're going down the road, they'd unroll this. It was this case just rolled up there. Here's, this is George, you know, this he or she could drive, turn over, back with her butt. So it just made her job a little easier there. And I've never seen one of those called scooters. Then, this is a 1930, let's see, I gotta cheat here, I forget my date sometimes. 1932, the Road Carriers Union Association, by counties to raise money for the needy during the Depression, cost a road carrier a dime to get his or her name put on here. This is Calhoun County. And then the county director sold the names, sent it on to the state director who sold this all together. Then they auctioned this off at one of their state conventions to raise more money for the needies back then. So if you, these are only road carriers, so I don't think your dad's name would be on there. It just deals with road carriers. But you'll see, look at the UP there. Yeah, not too many carriers back then up there in the UP. Still aren't. A lot of the carriers in the UP are contract carriers. They're not even postal employees. They just claim a flat amount or a flat amount of thing there. Okay, let's go into the train now. Janitor's office. I kicked him out, put him down in the closet. To this day, he still hates my guts. He won't talk to me. But I knocked a hole in the wall there. There was a door there, but that door didn't exist, so to make it look good, we knocked a hole in the wall there. But this is the mail hook. This was actually what was connected to the train. The RPO, or clerk, would grab that handle and lift it up. And I want to show you this video real quick. This is the first part of it. You see, they would be sticking their head out and watching. They go back, work 7 days on, they have 6 days off. So they actually worked a week, off a week, but the week they worked, they had to work 12 to 15 hours a day, stay in sleazy hotels that they put them up in Chicago, Detroit area, and this run in New York. They lived out of this suitcase. It was a government-issued suitcase, clothes, shoes, and underwear, and kept changing it. Then when the trains quit running, we went to the buses, the HIPOs, highway post office. This is a HIPO, they call them. Highway post office. This ran from Grand Rapids to Traverse City for many years. The only problem with HIPOs, we made them sort mail while they're going down the road 50 miles an hour, and you can imagine, the gear ran out and the car stopped suddenly in front of the bus driver, the poor cork went flying through the air, and they got a lot of injuries. So I think OSHA probably put a stop to us doing that. But here's, if you ever see some old letters, here, this is the first run out of Cadillac to Grand Rapids, HPO, Highway Post Office. The trains were canceled, RPO, Railroad Post Office. Save these, because these cancellations are becoming valuable at stamp shows, you know, because there's less and less of them as they get destroyed over the years. Then this is a collection that was donated to me by Arnold Peterson. He was a postal inspector in Michigan. He rode the trains, inspected the clerks back in the 30s and 40s. And he donated his collection of every mail train that existed in Michigan and their postmarks and the day they started and when it ended. He documented all this. Like this is the Buckland Shy. So you'll see it says RPO, all the old cancellations, RPO, Railroad Post Office, and then it was canceled on the train. This is the safe. If you watch the old movies and they're robbing the train, this is what they were looking for. The gold, the silver, and the cash was kept in the mail car. This was used on a train many years, and they used it on the ferry boat from Mackinac City to Mackinac Island to protect the registered mail. Then when they fly the mail over to Mackinac Island, they didn't need this anymore, so I got put it in the museum. This is an extra sorting case to put the mail in. On the trains, then when they didn't need it, they could just fold it up. My wife wants that for a shoe case. This is my oldest mail bag. This is from 1859. It was on a stagecoach run from Traverse City to Brutus, Michigan. And it even has the old lock. It says mail pouch on it. I've been offered $400 for that by a lock collector. And then Brutus is burnt in there. That's why we know where it went. It's Brutus. They would burn the name in there of which city they dropped it off. And Brutus had a post office until about 6 months ago. The landlord wouldn't fix the roof. They got black mold in there, so they closed it, suspended delivery out of there. And so I'm not sure where they're getting the mail out of right now. This is one of 3 mail buggies you're going to see today. This was used by Art Ludlow in Springport, Michigan, about 40 miles northeast of here. This is a picture of him with this buggy on this sleigh. There's his bearskin coat right there. You look inside, see the old chair and the sorting thing there. Art Tilford's a retired road here from Springport. Gave him a tour just like I'm giving you. He said, Mike, I got something like barn you should have. So he's loaned this to me indefinitely to share with you today. There. And this was his Sears and Roebuck charcoal heater too. You put a charcoal in the furnace of the post office, get it warm before you leave. Then you would open and close your vent. It's depending on how much heat you wanted out of it. And keep you warm all day, hopefully. Okay, let's go into the coal bin now. They would shovel it from the outside into that little room, into this big room, then into the double doors there, into the boiler. In the 50s, they converted to natural gas, so we didn't need this. There was still coal in here in 1989 when I started using this room, or 90, bless you. And so I had my son clean the coal out. I made my son, because he was going to college, and help paint it and get it cleaned up. Because this room was the worst room to restore, to get it usable because of the coal dust in here. But that's a 1963 Mailster 3-wheel motor scooter. This was used down in Ohio. I located it. I had it restored. I mismeasured and couldn't get it downstairs, so I had the kids in the Battle Creek Boy Center cut that in half for me, put it down free of charge as a project. This is a 77 Jeep. This was used in Marshall. We went to the long life vehicles. I got the Postal Service to give that to me. And then I couldn't figure out how I was going to get down here, so I went to the Boet Center again to the teacher in Battle Creek. I said, can you tear it apart? So the kids took it apart piece by piece. We lowered it with Bud Record, donated his time. Here's the kids down here. They lowered it down, then we got it stuck in the doorway of the furnace room. We had to tear the door frame off, and we damaged the roof a little, but we pushed it in and we got it in here. Then the kids came back and put it back together free of charge for me. Because like I say, I'm not allowed to spend any money, so all this was through donations and their time. The only sad part, these both ran. Had I known 5 years later I'd have the building outside, I would have never put these 2 vehicles down here, but I never dreamed I would have the building I have outside, or I would have kept them running and been in parades with them, but I never thought of it. Now it's too late, because the engines are gone, and I took the transmission out because of safety reasons, and oil, gas, don't want any explosions down here. This is a 1906 rural mailbox. This is my deluxe mail buggy. This is the Cadillac of the 3 I have. This is called the Light Runner. It's tin on the side, canvas, sliding windows, Dutch doors. A little better shape than that one over there. And this was made by the Harrington Manufacturing Company in Peoria, Illinois. They made these and sold these to the richer road carriers. And this also would go out into a sleigh in the wintertime. I've been in a couple parades with the horses. I've rented horses and been in parades with it. The last one was in St. Joe for the Blossom Time Parade, and the horse and I didn't get along. I think it's the last time I'm going to do it, because it didn't go good. And I don't want to wreck the buggy, it's getting old. Above your head is a model of a 1918 de Havilland airmail plane. After World War I, we bought the Army surplus planes, hired the pilots, and started flying the mail. In the first 2 years of using them, half our pilots were killed in crashes. We invented the beacon light. We also invented the lighted runways to help save our employees. But then when we wore them out, the Depression had hit, so we started using commercial airlines to fly the mail now. What? Yes, yeah. There's a book on it right there. Right there. The Havilland DH4, it's called. And behind Mr. Zinn right there is a 1952 Swin bicycle. City carriers used to deliver mail twice a day in the cities, and in the afternoon they didn't have a lot of mail, so they'd jump on a bicycle and deliver around town. There. Then in the small post offices that didn't have trucks, the postmaster and the clerk would wheel this down at the train station, pick up the mail, and then bring it back. I'll show you a picture in a few minutes of Sheresco Post Office when Mrs. Lee's house. She had one of these, and she or the clerk would have to wheel it down to the train station. They actually had a train station in Sheresco and pick up the mail, or pick it up off the ground as they threw it on the ground there. This is a portable Army postal unit. When the Army would go to the field, they would take this and they could sell stamps behind there, or they've got their mail to general delivery hold back there through the alphabet and hand off to the soldiers there. Then in 1916, Harley Davidson made 17,439 Harley cars, so we had Harley mailmen out there, the sidecars delivering your mail, 1916 there. This is a push cart. They would use this in a downtown area, like let's say Battle Creek. When they went to a jewelry store, they could lock it up because lots of times the downtown area had jewelry stores, especially, there would be diamond rings registered through the mail. It would be valuable stuff, gold watches and stuff. So they would lock it up there. Looks like an ice cream cart. There. Okay, follow me down the hallway. We just got one room left, then we'll go outside and we'll be done. Battle Creek. Here's on V-mail, victory mail. During World War II, soldiers had to write on onion skin paper, then their commanding officer would censor the letters they wrote to their girlfriend or their husband or their wife or whatever. And then they photographed them on, microfilmed them, I mean. Then they sent it on to New York City and they develop it down to this size, and that's all your mom and dad or girlfriend or wife would read of your original letter. And they also would strike out things that you shouldn't tell them and that. And this lady in '94, I gave it to her, so upset I didn't have anything on V-mail. She mailed all this to me. This is a letter coming back from her husband saying he's missing in action. This is a letter from the prison camp, U.S. censored. We even read her mail before she got it, which amazed me. If I read your mail, I'd get fired if I got caught. You know, but we read all the mail that came from the country over there, what they were saying. And then this is a copy of her going to prison ward post in Stylog 17B. He did survive the prison camp. And there, but that's interesting.
We got mail from a cousin during World War II.
Oh yeah, they even opened personal mail. Yeah, if it was from England or whatever. This is a dumping table where we dump the mail to face it. Just lots of pictures here. This is Mr. Flynn and Horse. When I started working here, actually we had two Flynns that worked here. It would be one was the granddaughter of this Flynn and one was the granddaughter-in-law of Mr. Flynn here. That's the guy that made that extra $50 every 3 months for his horse and buggy allowance. Before World War I, women weren't allowed to carry city mail. This is a picture of one of the first city carriers, isn't she cute? For World War I. But as I say, we had to lower our standards and hire women to start delivering mail during the war. It's really amazing. When I started here in 1970, Fred Ryer was postmaster in politics. I think there was only one woman city or rural sub. There was no women that worked upstairs as full-time there. It was a man thing to do. And now we've got more women upstairs than we do men. It's just kind of reversed. Women actually are better hand-eye coordination. Women can sort mail on an average faster than men. Because I remember when we hired our first city carrier, a woman, I was supervisor then, and she would be gone about half hour, 20 minutes before the other guys would leave. And I'd say, guys, she's making you look bad. You gotta speed up. She's gone delivering mail already. You're still here casing mail. You know? She was good. This is the post office when it was across the street where Schroeder Grall's office was. We moved from Schroeder Grall's office across the street to where we are now. You look at it here, they had an opera house above it. We were there. And when we moved out, I think either AMP or Kroger's went in there. One of them. Was it AMP was in there before they built the new one out on Michigan Avenue there? Then down here, this deals with Calhoun County. We had 58 post offices at one time. Now we're down to 8. We had 58 with a little population, 8 with a lot. You know who put us postmasters out of a job? The rural carriers did, RFD. In 1896, when they started delivering out to Ellis Corners, Lion Lake, Cedar Lake, Clarendon Center, Groverville, Eckford, Wilderville, Marengo, Rice Creek, Duck Lake, North Marshall, Portello, Compass Center, Wheatfield, Joplin, Newton. They were all closed down there. Or when the trains quit running from Marshall to Homer to Adrian, Eckford got closed down, and we got half of Eckford and the other half went to Homer there. But I've got documented the post offices, who the postmaster was in the year they were appointed. I got that information from the archives in Washington, D.C. Also, I've got some letters here from 1852, paid 3 cents out of Rice Creek. And there's one, Eckford, 1911. And I've got a couple other ones I don't have up there. I got one from Portello Road. And this one is very interesting to me, Newton. It was Newton Township, or Newton. And it was Mr. Gleason in 1839 was postmaster there, and come to find out, it was originally just down the road from where I live out in the country now. And a letter came up for a bid on eBay when I bought that other one. I bid $100 on it and I didn't get it. I wish I'd have bid more because Newton, it was only open like 5 years before it was closed down. I should have bid more money, but I didn't know. Because I would have liked to got that. As we go into the last room, this is the mailman's favorite song. I call this my stamp collecting room, my junk room. The stuff that I don't know what to do with, I put in here.
I'm not afraid.
This used to be the carrier's old swing room. And the bathroom was in there, showers in there. But nobody wanted to come down in the basement, so I built a break room upstairs so I could use this as part of the museum there. But I did have to cut another hole in the wall there to get in here because that door meant I could get upstairs, and I'm not allowed to have access to the upstairs anymore, so we put a new doorway over there and got that bolted on the other side so I can't get upstairs anymore. But this is on stamp collecting. I've got a lot of first day programs, first day issues. Senator Carl Levin's been here. He's a stamp collector. There's a picture of him with my grandson and I, and his cachet envelopes that he's designed. I've got Denmark stamps, Japanese stamps, Marilyn Monroe stamps for you old gentlemen that were in love with her at one time. Amazed me. Marshall has a sister city in Japan, and every time they come over here, I give them a tour. And the Japanese gentlemen just love Marilyn Monroe. I don't know why. They're fascinated by her. And they always want me to take that picture down, have their picture taken, hold the picture for some reason. This is official Olympic torch. In 1992, we helped sponsor the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is one of many that ran across the United States to light the eternal flame. The Postmaster Atlanta donated that to me. Feel how heavy that is. Pass that around. It's heavy. Can you imagine running down the road with that like that? Holding it up? Oh, wow.
Be careful.
Then, I don't know, many years ago, somebody donated me an English mailbox. This is what you would see in England. I can't remember what ER stands for. Something to do with the Queen.
Elizabeth.
Thank you. Elizabeth Regina? Yeah. Okay. But about a year ago, I had some Germans come through from Eaton Corporation, and they said, well, why don't you have a German mailbox? And I said, well, get me one. 2 months later, they mailed us to Eaton Corporation and donated. Somehow, they got one from the post office over there. That's a real, it's not old, but that's a German mailbox if you went to Germany. So if you see the Bundespost there. Then, this is the Preside, Ohio post office that I found. I want to show you a quick video here, different ways we delivered mail over the years. Of course.
There you go.
Turn it on, I guess. There we go. I'm just going to show you the first 3 seconds of it. I still have 2 of them. There's a 3-wheel mail store, different styles. Look at those old trucks.
And postal workers have gone
Did you have that name?
extraordinary lengths to bring
No, that was published by headquarters and sent out years ago. Look at that motor scooter.
Yeah.
I'd love to get that one. I've not seen one even in a museum.
no vehicle was too
Look at that gyro. They call those gyros, I guess. Dog sleds. You know who put them out of business in Alaska?
get through.
Snowmobiles.
Oh.
Yeah, they use snowmobiles now. Streetcars in San Francisco.
Occasionally,
Then boat mail in the Detroit River. And they still do this in the Detroit River and the Ambassador Bridge. They use a tugboat now. And back in 1999, I was given a tour, and a lady, I was telling about it, the lady said, well, my uncle owns that company, the Westcott. And I says, well, is there any way you can get your uncle to let me deliver mail to the freighters? I want to ride that tugboat and do that. So about 2 months later, she called me up in May of '99. I got to ride the tugboats and deliver mail. And this is a story. You're welcome to take it. I got it. I published it in our postmaster's paper. And this is the Westcott. And that's me right there, and that's a story of my adventure that day in delivering it. We delivered to about 6 freighters, and they don't stop. When they come down through the Detroit area, they'll call the Westcott company, who's contracted by the post office to do this, and they'll say, have our mail ready in 20 minutes, meet us under the Ambassador Bridge. And this is the Ambassador Bridge going into Canada, and their building and post office is right there. So we hurry up, load it. Also, order supplies too. They get dry goods or toilet paper or dish soap because they don't want to stop. It costs them too much money to stop that freighter to load up stuff. So they contract him to deliver supplies to them along with the mail. And we were loading up that day. They made me wear a life vest and also sign a waiver if I got hurt or killed my wife, or I couldn't sue them because it's dangerous. And because the freighter doesn't stop. We ram them. There's tires along there. They go up along the side and ram them and lock in while they're moving. And then they lower a pail down with their mail. And then you give them their mail and they raise it back up. Or if they want supplies, they open the side of the boat up while they're moving and you throw it in there and then they throw the mail off. And it was quite an adventure to do that.
So this will go all over the world then?
This goes all over the world. They deliver to about 500 freighters. And what you do, you address it to the person's name, the name of the freighter, Detroit, Michigan, 482222. And they put it in that mail bag for that freighter. They got bags labeled all the neighbors' freighters. And when that freighter calls, they pull that bag and anything else they want, and they meet them under the bridge.
Wow.
And, so I'll lay that there if you want one. Just help yourself. I had a bunch of them printed to hand out. This is the Palo Post Office in 1995. They closed Palo, Michigan down. It's north of Ionia, Michigan. It was in a building that had no running water, no bathroom. The postmaster had locked the front door and go down to that gas station to go to the bathroom when I visited.
Oh dear.
And so I got him to give me the interior of it, the sign, and I saved it. Otherwise, it would have been gone forever. Here. Then over here, we got one more thing. Then we'll go upstairs to the building. And if you want to, you can come back down when we're done. I'm going to give another tour here in a few minutes from some retirees out of Detroit. Carrier, your daughter's bringing her father down here. But in 93, Elvis was here. We issued the Elvis stamp. There's me with Elvis in 93 in the lobby. And the king is sighted at the post office. One of my carriers was a singer, so we dressed him up that day as Elvis. Because we got to sell the Elvis stamps at noon that day. And he made the front page with battleship paper. I'm an Elvis fan. We did run out of stamps that day. Somebody started a rumor that we were going to run out there. We wouldn't be able to get any more, and it worked because we did run out. I got another 10,000 the next day. This is what you can do with stamps. Patricia of the framing studio across the street took the Georgia Key stamp, framed it, but then she mailed letters to her friends to mail back, so they postmarked from all over the United States. Put your envelopes there, your pen there. She got a first aid issue. Put your writing paper there and your stamps there. Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful. Then she put it in the closet over there. She said, what are you doing? Well, I won the award. I'm just going to store it. I said, let me have it over here. I can advertise. I told her to get an advertisement. I'd advertise for her, but she never did. But isn't that beautiful? Yeah. What you can do. Okay, let's go down up the stairs and move up that little building. This is a 1931 Model A mail truck used in Grand Rapids, Michigan from 1931 to 1947. And about 6 years ago, I got to be in the inauguration parade with President Bush. For President Bush. That's the Postmaster General there. He was Bill Henderson. He was originally going to ride with me in that mail truck in the parade. And the first time I ever met a Postmaster General, it's kind of an honor to meet the big guy in Washington, D.C. And this is the day before in the garage downtown Washington, D.C. where we all met to get acquainted with each other and what was going to happen the next day. And at the last minute, he backed out from riding with me, so my wife got to ride with me. But she was thrilled. But let me fast forward this. This is Jim Bruns. He's the director of the National Postal Museum. He was up there's me. Oh, I was so nervous. There's about 10 TV stations there interviewing us. And at the last minute, the Postmaster General's secretary says, here, this is what you're going to tell them. They had a canned speech. I didn't know that. So I had 10 minutes to study this. And I was so nervous. We'll speed it up again. I want to get to the parade part.
Okay. I'm sure you did Marshall proud.
Here we are going down Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm right there. They had 4 old Fords and 7 brand new Fords. Ford Motor Company sponsored us and to get us there. And that's my wife and I right there turning on. I'm right there. That's a 49 Ford in front of me. And but this is going behind the White House now. It was a cold, rainiest day, freezing rain, and we had to be there. There's President Bush right there. And he looked down, waved at me, then he went like that. When he went like that, my hair was just standing up. So he actually saw me. He wasn't going to the bathroom or left, you know. Because it was cold there that day. Very cold there. But this is the only thing the Postal Service has ever bought me. Bill Evans from Long Island, New York, found this in Grand Rapids, bought it, sent it to Long Island, New York. Took him 7 years to restore it. There's only 7 or 10 of these left in the nation. They only made 400 of these and realized they were too small, and so they went to the AA, the 3/4 ton mail truck. But anyway, about 6-7 years ago, he's up in his 80s now, and he was getting too old for it, so he wanted to sell it. He wanted $30,000 for it, so I was going to mortgage my house, but my wife said no, or she'd divorce me, so I had to come up with a different way. And the Rotary Club wouldn't sponsor me, so I went to my boss on my knees and begged him, and he said no. About 3 weeks later, matter of fact, it was up to Wakefield, Michigan. We were up to Wakefield at a convention up there, and my boss was there, and I had 300 postmasters there to help me twist his arm and buy him drinks that night at the bar. And for some reason it worked, because the next day he says, Mike, call your dogs off, I'll do what I can. And 2 weeks later, we had it. But I did get Mr. Evans to come down to $20,000 and donate the other $10,000 as a tax write-off. And so we've got it here, and I promised my boss I'd put it in parades, and I've been in parades and all over Michigan and Indiana with it now, and plus Washington, D.C.
You had 300 of you in Wakefield?
Yes, at the ski lodge up there.
You had to displace the whole rest.
I know. in that ski lodge up there. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the ski place, but it was there. And yeah, then there's another mail buggy. This was used in Rushton, Michigan, from 1900 to 1911.
Oh, is that where that went?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
That was used in Rushton. This is just a little different. It's got looks a little bigger than that first buggy I showed you. A little more room. I love how this goes up. Look at that. How they did that. There. And okay, now this just got here 2 weeks ago. A couple years ago, St. Joe, Michigan had Chicago did the cows downtown, which St. Joe did the carousel horses, because they had the carousel down on the beach, Silver Beach Music Park. So they did horses. Well, the post office, my friend Jan Ferguson, sponsored the carousel horse with a stamp. We came out with this stamp, 32-cent one. So she copied that and had it displayed in front of the post office for a couple years, but then it was all over like last month. So the post office bought it for us to put in the museum here. Otherwise, it would have been auctioned off somewhere else. But so we got the carousel horse now here. Yeah, the biggest postal museum. Questions asked: is there any other post office museums? Smithsonian, Washington D.C. has the largest, and I'm the second largest now. But they had $15 million to open their museum in 1992. I think they opened. I was there for the grand opening of that. I started before they did, and but they have more money than I do. I don't have the money that they do to compete. So, but well, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. If you ever want to bring your family back, I'd love to do it. If you bring your family back or something, I can do it during the day, during the week, or at night sometimes. I work at Schuler's now at night. I'm their night manager, so you got to arrange me a week ahead of time before I can do it at night, or I can do it on Saturday or Sunday. Anytime. I got a key to the back door now, so I can get down there and do tours anytime I want. So, thank you for coming. Enjoy. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
Take care. Next time down. Just
Real tight? Okay.
and then you can just.
Okay. Thank you, Paul, for coming. You got to get Hans to come down here. Would you tell him he needs to come?
I will. Yeah. Mike, is
Yes.
there somebody was asking us a place to put donations?
Yeah, there. Yeah, just give it to me. Give my hand, I guess. Yeah, I do buy. Yeah. I do, but I tell you, I got a mailbox downstairs for donations that somebody sent me, but I don't. I thought I had the key to open it. There's money in there right now. I can't get it open because I don't have the right arrow key. I got to call the Mount Pleasant post office and get their key, which is hard to get, to send it down here so I can open it up and change the lock in it because I don't have the right key to open it.
I'm Cemetery. We live right here.
Oh, do you really?
Rushton no longer exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on our map. I mean, it's still a map.
Do they? Is there stores around? I've always
There's
wanted to
an
visit
old
that.
mill there.
A mill?
It's been restored.
Wow.
And there are old houses
Houses.
there, but it's no longer a post
Post
office.
office, yeah.
It's,
Close-
that was such a start.
Yeah.
We can send you
Rush
photographs
Bar.
of the old
Yeah.
mill.
Yeah, if you want to see
Okay.
those.
Sure. Oh yeah. Anything to do with
We also
that, just tell about it.
Old, you know, Grandma Del Schaefer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember your.
We have old postcards of hers. Are you at all
yes.
interested in
Yeah.
those? Okay.
Yeah, I am.
So I've
Put
been
on
wondering
display
what
down
to do
there.
with them. So.
Yeah, I sure am.
Okay.
So how do we send things to you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Marshall Postal Museum, P.O. Box 214, Marshall, Michigan. Or you can just
Okay.
put Marshall Postal Museum, care of Marshall Post Office, Marshall. I have a P.O. Box 214 for the mail.
But we don't even, if we forget the number, you
Just
still
put
get
Marshall
these.
Postal Museum, Marshall Post Office, Marshall.